Welcome to the Attention Deficit Disorder Expert Podcast Series by Attitude Magazine.
Hello, my name is Annie Rogers, and on behalf of the Attitude team, I'm so pleased to welcome you to today's ADHD Experts presentation titled ADHD Ages and Stages Part 1, Common Challenges and Practical Strategies for Children with ADHD. And this will be the first in our series of 3 webinars, really examining how ADHD manifests across the lifespan. It's very interesting. About 2 weeks ago, the American Journal of Psychiatry published a new study which showed that fully 90% of children with ADHD experience symptoms through adulthood, which confirmed what many of us already know about the persistent and yet shifting nature of ADHD. So today we'll be talking about the developmental milestones, specifically of childhood, and how ADHD impacts nearly all of them. We will also be discussing practical strategies for caregivers and educators to employ in helping children with ADHD craft and build the building blocks necessary for ongoing success. And we are so pleased that leading today's webinar will be Meg Leahy. Meg Leahy, MSNCC, BCC. She's an award-winning therapist, coach, counselor, author, speaker, and mentor, also a great friend of Attitude. As the founder of Leahy Learning, Meg has provided the skills, understanding, and resources to help people change their lives for more than 20 years. She's an international ADHD strategist who has treated college students and adults in the Adult ADHD Treatment and Research Program in the Department of Psychiatry at the University of Pennsylvania. She's also the co-author of 2 editions of Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorders Throughout the Lifespan, and has written numerous articles, blogs, and webinars on ADHD and other mental health issues. She received the Best of Philly Award, for college advising, and has been named a Wall Street Journal Woman of Note. We encourage you to visit leahylearning.com for more information on Meg. And before I hand over the microphone to Meg and we get down to business, I have just a few very quick housekeeping items. If you are tuned into the live webinar, you can download the slides now by clicking on the Event Resources section of your webinar screen. And if you're interested in the Certificate of Attendance option, please just look out for instructions. You'll receive an email from us about an hour after we wrap up the live broadcast. If you happen to be listening in replay or podcast mode, you can visit attitudemag.com and just search for podcast 370. That's 370 to access the slides, the webinar replay, and the certificate of attendance option. Finally, if you support the work we're doing here at Attitude to strengthen the ADHD community, we encourage you to visit attitudemag.com/subscribe and sign up for Attitude Magazine for your family or to share with a teacher or a loved one who could benefit from greater ADHD understanding. So without further ado, I am so pleased to welcome Meg Leahy and this very important topic of ADHD challenges and practical strategies for children. Thank you for joining us today, Meg.
Thank you, Annie. It's so nice to be here. I'm thrilled to be here to be able to do this 3-part webinar series and to start with part 1 today. And just loving breaking it all down for everyone. I did a webinar back in 2018 for APSARD that I'm so happy inspired this whole series. And it just really is a perspective of ADHD that's close to my heart and ways of looking at it. So I'm excited to be here. So let's get to it. The first thing I like to start with is a quote from F. Scott Fitzgerald. And it says, "The test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold 2 opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. One should, for example, be able to see that things are hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise." I've always felt that this quote really puts into words how I feel about working with ADHD. In order to help my clients, I've had to get inside their ADHD brains and find out how they work. And to do that means understanding how the symptoms of ADHD can present along with the challenges they bring. It also means being tenacious enough to press on and make use of the strategies and resources that are out there, sometimes, oftentimes, designing my own, which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. Just going to change the slide here. There we go. I know our focus today is children with ADHD, but first I'd like to just take a minute to talk about a few basics that apply to people with ADHD at any age. Over the last 20 years, I've put together this list, and it's a list of things that I've found everyone with ADHD, no matter what age they are, and the people who support them really need to understand in order to make change and be successful. So we'll just run quickly through it, and I'll give you a little blurb about each, because I really feel that this bigger picture is important before we move into specifically children. Understanding across the lifespan. Across the lifespan or throughout the lifespan is a phrase that ADHD professionals use quite a lot. And I've found very often that no one actually explains what it really means to a person with ADHD, especially a child. Lifespan, if you're anywhere from 4 to 12 or 13, you're not really quite sure what a lifespan means just yet. So while we are talking about ADHD in children today, ADHD is not just a pediatric condition. Most of you who are here today know that you don't grow out of it. It lasts for a lifetime, and the symptoms and challenges evolve and change with time, environmental and emotional stressors, hormones, and age. Which leads me to the next point, which is ADHD is chronic. So if it lasts a lifetime, that means that it never goes away. It can get better and it can be worse at some times, and you'll need ongoing treatment. Not continual ongoing treatment, but the expectation of maintaining the state of success and confidence is the one that you want to be in. Most people are just used to going to a doctor for a cold or a broken bone and being given treatment that will resolve that issue. So you go for a cold, you take an antibiotic, you feel better in 8 days. You break your ankle, you get some x-rays, you get a cast, and in a few weeks, you're better. You're done. Sometimes it might hurt a little afterwards, but generally you move on. With ADHD, because it is chronic, the idea of tweaking a medication or having to try various medications or therapies until you find the right one that works for right now is a new concept. And the fact that you might have to take meds at certain times, but other times might not need them and go on and off them and change them, all of a sudden you're in a whole world that can be overwhelming. But this is one that's really important to understand. I like to really emphasize that this is something that if you understand this, it helps so that you don't get frustrated. Because when people get frustrated by the process of trying to find the right therapy or trying to find the right medication, they sometimes just shut down and avoid the treatment that they really need. Next, we're going to move into what ADHD looks like in action. As I mentioned earlier, each person with ADHD has something unique going on inside and outside of their brains. And symptom lists are great. They're neat and clean on paper, but in real life, symptoms emerge in many ways and at many different times. So don't get locked into what ADHD should look like. That's often how many people with inattentive symptoms, especially girls and women, miss out on being diagnosed early in life. My next point is, and a question that I get quite often, does this mean a lifetime of support? And the answer is yes. But it doesn't have to be continuous, and it doesn't have to be with just one person with just one type of support. The best thing is to find holistic treatment and to ensure that, and this is especially important for parents to know, is to assemble a team. This makes such a difference in childhood. To assemble psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, speech, OT, tutors, and coaches, and school personnel. If you put a team together, that is there to support your family and your child, it will paint a complete picture of your child for you and also for each of the other members of the team. Lots of ADHD patients, especially children, will say things in my office that they might not feel comfortable saying in a doctor's office. And teachers will see behaviors that I might not get to witness. So if a team is assembled to support the child and the family, and they're connected with each other and in communication with each other, you're going to get the best results and be able to make the fastest progress. Lastly, before we move on to children specifically, one size does not fit all. In my very first session with clients, I always say that if this isn't working for either one of us, I'll help you find someone else to work with. And I think it's really important that children with ADHD and the people who love them know that they deserve to ask for what they need. This might mean that they have to see a number of different people until they get the right fit. And that's okay. It might mean that you have to interview a number of professionals or even start and discontinue treatment. And like I said before, that can become frustrating, can take a lot of time and effort. But it might be the third or fourth person that you find who might be able to help you actually change your life and be able to make a difference in the life of your child. So what I like to say is it's better to spend the time searching for the right fit than wasting time doing something that you know isn't helping, especially with children. You don't want to burn them out or make them feel that something's wrong with them. And that can happen very easily if they feel they're being forced to do something that isn't making a difference for them. Okay, so those are just a few basics that I wanted to share that apply to all the stages of the ADHD lifespan. And now, we've clearly defined what a lifespan is, so it makes sense. So next, we're going to move into supporting children with ADHD, which is what you came for. So let's dig into this. There's obviously a lot to cover, and while I could talk for days, I've only got about 35 to 40 minutes today, so I'm going to break things down into 3 sections. We're going to cover symptoms and their challenges, strategies, and treatments. So let's start with the symptoms of ADHD in children and the challenges those symptoms can create off the page and in real life. Let's take a look at a list of symptoms. Whoa. That's a lot to take in, right? That is the ADHD symptom list for children from the Attitude website. And like I said before, the words are very neatly arranged on the page, and just reading them can feel overwhelming. But in real life, ADHD symptoms can look and feel like this. The thing that I dislike about webinars is that I can't see all of you and the group can't share. Right now, you're all tensed up thinking about the ADHD roller coaster and how fast and crazy that roller coaster can be. So right now, I just want to have everyone take a deep breath. And what we're going to do is walk through the symptom list together. And what I want you to do as I read off the symptom list is to think of an example of each symptom in real life, in your life. And while you can't share your example, you'll know that everyone else out there has their own example that they're thinking of. And it will help you realize that none of us are in this alone. And I think that's a huge part of making progress with ADHD treatment, is that so many people feel isolated and that they're the only person going through things. So let's start. I'll read each symptom and you'll think of a time that that symptom has manifested in your child's life. Ready? Short attention span, especially for non-preferred tasks. I think you're probably thinking of one. Take some time. One that comes to mind for me is when a child has to read a book that they don't enjoy or has to put something back. They might get halfway through the task and you'll find them incomplete. The next symptom is hyperactivity, which might be physical, verbal, and or emotional. Take some time. Think of how this looks in real life for you and your family. You might see a child jumping up and down. You might be out in a public place. You might be trying to do 20 things at once and they really, really, really want your attention. The next symptom that's on the list is impulsivity, which may manifest as recklessness. Take a moment. Picture that. This might be a child climbing on furniture, jumping off things too high, falling off the monkey bars. The next is fidgeting or restlessness. You have a mental picture of that. We've all seen this, especially when we're waiting in a doctor's office or someplace they might not want to be, at swim lessons that they don't want to get in the pool, just trying to wrangle them and get them where they need to be. Next is disorganization and difficulty prioritizing tasks. This one can fall into a number of areas. I'm sure you're all picturing something right now, and they're all very close, but very different. I see this a lot and hear this a lot from clients when coming home from school, starting to get homework done, or it's time for bedtime. They're not sure what to do first. You send them off to brush their teeth. You find them playing with their toys when you get upstairs. Which brings us into poor time management and time blindness. I'm sure you can visualize that. Time blindness means that they have no real concept of time. Most things that seem like they're going by very quickly for them are really a lot of time has passed. This happens in the shower very often. One of the things that I have supplies on my website, tools that you can use. And one of them is a shower clock with a timer on it. And we found that helps with many children because they get in there and they're just thinking about life, especially the inattentive children, or making something great with bubbles. And that moves on to frequent mood swings and emotional dysregulation. Make your picture. We've all seen meltdowns. We've all seen the highs and the lows, the inability to cope sometimes with the consequences of something, and just the complete emotional distress that creates. Forgetful and poor working memory is next. And I feel like many of you might be drawing the image of your child's lunch sitting on the counter or something else that they should have taken to school and that you might deliver to them or you might not, which is an ongoing discussion in my practice. Next, we have inability to control anger or frustration. And you're gonna have a picture for that. When not able to do what they need to do and their executive functions lock up, it can lead to anger or frustration. I'm thinking about schoolwork. I'm thinking about a game that they're learning to play with friends, and can sometimes be a full meltdown. And again, we're going to talk about coping skills for that later on. Trouble completing tasks and frequent procrastination. If you don't want to do something that we were talking about in the beginning, it's hard to get to it. So the procrastination can take many forms. And right now, I feel like you can all picture the form of procrastination that you see in your house or in your school. Distractibility is pretty simple. But inattentiveness, I got a lot of requests today to talk about strategies for inattentive children, and we are going to do that. So the last one that they have here is difficulty awaiting turn. I mean, it's very exciting to be in the ice cream line, and it's really hard to wait. So you probably have a picture for that. And now you have a whole lot of pictures, and you're thinking about what it really is like to have ADHD in your life rather than some words on the paper. And when you think about how the words take life, it really humanizes ADHD and helps you understand that what your children are struggling with, right? It's not, oh, there's a butterfly, or, oh, there's a squirrel. There's so much more to it, and it affects children and families on so many different levels that it's really important that we take the time to break it all down and really examine it and be able to understand it so that we can empathize with it. In children, the ADHD symptoms that we just explored can be grouped into the broader descriptors of hyperactivity, inattention, distractibility, and impulsivity. And they all have a huge impact on behavior and performance in the classroom, with friends and family, and out in the world. And when you read that symptom list and you really visualize the real life challenges that they create, it can certainly be overwhelming, especially when we think about children building that foundation that they will need for the rest of their lives. This is why childhood is a critical time for intervention. I can't stress enough how early intervention correlates with greater success. And I'd just like to take a moment to acknowledge all of you who are here today, looking to begin, to continue, or to improve that journey. It's a big deal, and you need to give yourself credit, the credit you deserve for showing up today. There may be hard days and hard work ahead, but as I tell my clients, always take the wins on the way. So next, we're going to move into the challenges involved in building a strong foundation. I have, now that you have been able to visualize the real challenges and see how they affect lives, I have broken things down into 3 areas that we can examine. And those 3 areas are educational, emotional, and behavioral, and the social contract. In childhood, which for today's purposes, I'm defining as up to 6th grade, children work hard to build a foundation in key areas. One of the first key areas is reading acquisition. This is also near and dear to my heart because I got into the ADHD world when I was teaching children how to read. When we think of the symptom list, it's obvious how sitting and reading can be exhausting, both physically and mentally, for students who struggle to focus. The second area is math skills. Children with ADHD are distracted or bored and miss out on important steps that mathematical concepts are built on. If they're rushing to finish or unfocused while completing their work, they can make what many teachers label silly mistakes, missing a number or using the wrong symbol, adding instead of subtracting. You've all seen these circled on worksheets or tests your child has brought home. Interestingly enough, in the first ADHD medication trials for stimulants, the most measurable improvement was math. Interesting, right? All children need to learn to follow multi-step directions. And whether it's a math problem or your morning routine or understanding how to play t-ball, mastering multi-step directions is stressful for kids with ADHD. Not just mentally, but emotionally. In the process of mastering them, children with ADHD can become distracted, frustrated, and angry. There can be avoidance and there can be meltdowns. We've all had to handle both. And these are all the things that you have pictured in your mind. We're now talking about how they work in real life. Which brings us to understanding and engaging in the social contract. The foundation that's being built at this age is not only about academics. Children with ADHD may interrupt their teachers and their classmates. They find it hard to keep friends, and sometimes they act out in anger. And as most of you know, these same behaviors can create tension at home, on vacations, with siblings, and with neighborhood friends. Children with ADHD, all children at this point actually, especially children with ADHD, are learning how and why it's important to control and regulate their emotions, express themselves with their family and their peers, and moderate their behavior inside and outside of the classroom. None of this is easy for the ADHD brain. These are all executive function skills, and improving and strengthening them is a monumental task. A lot of this foundation work is built through observation and practice, which can also be a challenge in homes where one or more parent may have ADHD and may not know how or be able to help because they've been overwhelmed with dealing with their own challenges. And as children get older, organization grows complicated and schedules become more complex. There are play dates and birthday parties, sports and music practices to navigate. In school, they begin to use lockers and change classrooms. And all of these transitions can be difficult, to say the least, which is why I'm now going to talk about strategies for children with ADHD. Change our slide. I love developing and individualizing strategies. It's definitely one of my favorite parts of my job. There are lots of terrific resources and strategies out there, and you can build your own toolbox of strategies. If you go through the attitude.com website, there's a multitude of strategies out there. There will even be strategies that you'll be able to tweak and use different variations of over time, which are the best kinds of strategies. Keep them all in your toolbox. For today, I chose to group them into 7 groups that I feel are the most universal, the most useful, and also can be tweaked to address the most challenges, depending on the situation and the age of the child. We're going to talk about all of them, but I want to start with the 2 I believe have the most impact on children with ADHD and their families. So, the first of those 2 is positive reinforcement. Research shows that positive reinforcement is the only strategy that really comprehensively works for students and children with ADHD. It's not easy. It takes a lot of practice. You won't always be able to do it every single time, but it will become easier over time. And I know it takes a lot of patience, but it does pay off. When children struggle, negative consequences like punishment and reacting out of anger or frustration only break down their already sometimes damaged confidence and self-concept. If you're punishing a child for losing something or not being able to keep track of it, like say a special toy or a video game, and you're taking away their toy or video game as the punishment, to them, it comes down even harder and doesn't make much sense. So what you want to do, and there's a way I'm going to talk about this, is that you want to be sure that you're not using shame as a learning strategy. You want children to feel better about themselves, to build that confidence and their self-concept so that they can continue to build that foundation of confidence and that they will take things on themselves and move in a positive direction. Now, positive reinforcement does not mean avoiding or sugarcoating the truth. It means evaluating what happened, helping the child create self-awareness, and directing the child and making sure they comprehend what they did, what they needed to do correctly, instead of focusing on what they did wrong. The second major point that I think is super important is clarity, consistency, and honesty. Clear, consistent goals and rewards make a world of difference, especially for children. Like, this is the perfect age for rewards of all types, but also to set the base of an understanding and a need and a knowledge of what a clear, consistent goal looks like, how it's followed, and what it produces. Children with ADHD, as most of you know, have a very high intelligence. So they know when they're being gamed, right? If you're not telling them why something's happening, if you're not explaining what the goal is, if you're just throwing information at them, they're not going to be able to move forward without some understanding because they have no internal structure, and that creates chaos. It's the clear and consistent goals and guidelines and rules that help them build the mental scaffolding that strengthens their executive functioning and also makes your life easier. Moving on now to getting organized effectively. This is really important, and it follows along with clarity, consistency, and honesty. You want to have a space. What we like to say, and what we said at Penn a lot when I worked there in the ADHD clinic, was make sure that everything has a home. So if you look at that overarching piece of advice, you want to create a space where you know that things go so that when they're taken out, they can be returned there. You want to post lots of visual things. So many ADHD children and adults are visual learners because once something is out of sight, it's out of mind. If they don't see it, they forget it. That's why sometimes when you walk into your ADHD child's room, it's messy. There's things out where you can see them. They might be everywhere where you can see them, but your child knows exactly where each thing is. So coming up with a plan to help them understand that things can be put away and everything has a place to be put in definitely is going to lead to better organization. There are also a ton of examples and downloadable templates for organization. ADHD really responds well to checklists. You don't want to have too many checklists because you don't want to overwhelm so that they get blocked out. So you might have to try a few before you find out which one works for you. You might also combine different elements or different systems to meet your needs, but mainly you want to keep it simple. You want to have a short checklist. You might want to list out the steps. If it's getting dressed in the morning, where things are, you follow from 1 to 2 to 3, or it's color coded, get downstairs, where's your backpack, where's your coat, those things are listed. So just try and keep it simple. Life is hard enough with ADHD, so the goal is really to streamline and not add to the pile of things that hasn't been done, right? Posting a large color-coded list of expectations in a central location in your home is one of the most important things you can do. Just sort of the brain or the dumping place where all the information can go. Whiteboards are your friends. Embrace them. Keep a family calendar, a sports calendar, a homework calendar, maybe a calendar with all three. Whatever you need to keep track of, keep it on that whiteboard right where everyone can see it and add to it. You can also, and this is a really important thing when we're going to talk about multi-step directions in a little bit, but you can also break any task down into smaller steps to avoid the overwhelmingness that leads to children shutting down or breaking down. You can use reminders and guides, and you can be creative. And I suggest you should integrate humor because life is short and mornings are hard. One morning may seem like a long time, but if you do the math, from birth to age 18, there are only 6,570 mornings. And one day, you might miss those stressful mornings. So if you can add some humor into the situation to get through difficult mornings or difficult moments, I think you'll find that it will help. Sometimes the checklist isn't enough because they're not reading the checklist or not looking at the checklist. With that, sometimes you could take a picture, a photo of what the end result looks like of what they're supposed to be doing, and hang that picture next to the thing that you want them to do. If your child has a phone or a tablet, texting or messaging them one step at a time is also a really great strategy to help them keep moving along. Next, we are going to move on to signals and cues. It's really important and definitely helpful to develop signals. One of my favorites, and one that I have been using for a long time and suggesting to teachers and families, is that you place a stop sign sticker on a student's desk. The teacher, during class, can silently point to the stop sign to adjust any behavior without any shame, without any interruption, or without any discussion of what was going on. So your child is cued to understand what the stop sign means. You have a conversation with your child and the teacher. You set it up. There's understanding, that clarity that we talked about before, and you do it consistently. And you do all this without bringing the whole class to a halt or singling anyone out. Sometimes, too, for learning, one of the things that I do is I say to put a traffic light on their desk. And if they're having trouble, this is for a lot of impulsive students who might want to keep going to the teacher's desk or keep raising their hand or just really, really need to talk about what's going on with the assignment that they're doing. And it might be quiet work. For them, I put a stoplight on their desk. Green means they're doing just fine. Yellow means they're starting to struggle and might have some questions, but they're not ready to ask them yet. And red means I need help with this now. And for teachers who walk through the classroom while students are doing their silent independent work, this is an amazing tool. The other thing that I've done is take a picture of a student raising her hand and waiting for help, because oftentimes children with ADHD just have a terrible time waiting for help. They want to get right to it. They want to get the answers. They want to move on. So if you take a picture of your own child with their hand raised, waiting, that will anchor them into that moment. And you can either tape that to the desk or put it on a folder, put it in their notebook, and it's also very helpful. Cueing. I got a lot of requests, like I said, for how to help students with inattentive symptoms. And cueing is one of my favorite for that, because inattentive children are inside their heads. And so you might think they're paying attention. They might look like they're paying attention, and they could be thinking about what they're going to eat for dinner tonight. They could be thinking about the vacation that they're going to go on in 3 days. And you might not know because you can't see inside their heads. So the goal for inattentive children is to get them out of their heads and ground it back in their bodies. So depending on what a teacher will let your child have, I have a few recommendations. A stress ball. A stress ball is great because your child is using their hand and it's moving their body and it's bringing them out of their head and creating another kinesthetic feeling that is going to help them focus on the thing that they're doing. There's a company that makes brain putty, which is a small amount of putty. It doesn't stick to things. It comes in a little tin. It's not distracting. That's another thing that works very well. I see children of all ages enjoying the brain putty while they're thinking problems through, and they know to put it on their desk when they have to get back to work. If neither of those are an option for you, even a rubber band or a hair band on their wrist that they can snap and feel and bring themselves back to attention is really helpful during the day. Walking. Walking is so very important because walking and talking with a parent or a teacher or a coach is really going to ground you while you're processing. So the fact that you're moving your body and focusing on that while focusing on your thoughts is going to be able to help you move those thoughts out of your head and become present. Meditation is another great suggestion, and I'm going to talk about that when we get to treatments. But there are many meditations out there for children, especially children with ADHD. And I think that creating a meditation routine as early as possible is definitely helpful, helps build self-awareness, it helps calm their nervous system, and it helps them, again, feel grounded in their bodies. Now, socially, one of the things that I've found for inattentive children is to have some maybe physical cues, maybe a hand on the shoulder, a hand on the back, taking their hand, some sort of physical cue that you've talked about beforehand. Like hand on the shoulder means stand near dad, we're not going over there. Holding hands means we're going to move forward, come with me, we're doing this today. So helping them realize that you're breaking the thoughts that are just floating around inside their head and bringing them back to the present and the way that they're moving forward. Okay, next we are going to talk about having a homework plan, which is also another one of my favorites. You want to create a homework system that really helps the student. And the way to do this takes us back to getting organized effectively, right? So all the strategies in some way sort of intertwine with each other. So to get organized effectively around homework time, which I know can be frustrating and overwhelming because dinner needs to be made, sports need to be played, people need to do things, and also the homework needs to be done. And the most important thing is to first know what is assigned. You want to keep track of what work is completed. So even if the school is listed on the school website, which is a whole nother thing that I could talk about for days, the school website and how it can be confusing and how sometimes children are self-reporting appropriately and some are self-reporting inaccurately and some teachers aren't always posting appropriately. It's very stressful for families. So what I suggest is going back to the good old-fashioned physical task of recording what homework is. So if you have to look it up on the portal and write it down, the task of writing it down and then prioritizing what needs to be done makes it real, right? Again, we're grounding. It improves their executive functions and it provides an opportunity for positive reinforcement when they complete a task and then they can cross it off their own list. They're taking ownership of this whole process. It doesn't happen overnight. You can't just start asking them to go do this on their own. You will have to model the behavior, but eventually you can get to the point that they are confident, they take pride, and they'll be able to have ownership. And on my website, I do have 2 free downloadable homework worksheets that will help you accomplish what I just talked about. Also, it also helps to reach out to teachers to ask them if they might be open to emailing assignments until the student has mastered this task so that they gain the confidence by doing it rather than missing an assignment and falling into a shame spiral. Sorry, I got a little distracted there for a second. The next thing that we're going to get to are practical learning techniques. This brings us to some more universal strategies that can be used over and over in different variations. To boost early language skills, you want to find material that matches what your child is interested in. You can use graphic novels and audio text to build a love of books and engage in the material by asking questions to build his critical thinking and comprehension skills. Watch the film version of a just finished book and discuss the differences and similarities. To grow their math competence and confidence, keep a step-by-step sample problem nearby so that you can reference it easily during homework. Draw attention to operation signs and important information with highlighters and check for accuracy at each step of the problem in order to avoid frustration in the end. Highlighting directions and details in all work is always helpful. This is one of my oldies but goodies. Way back in the 90s when the internet was new and everyone was still using flip phones, I did some research and I discovered that we should all basically use yellow index cards with black ink. This color combination is easily processed by the brain for memory. So anything you want to learn or remember goes on a yellow flashcard. I did my own personal study when I was in graduate school, and using flashcards really helped me get through. So children can use the flashcards for reading words, for spelling, for math facts, vocabulary, any type of studying. And this too, like the homework plan, helps them take ownership of learning new words or memorizing new facts. The cards are theirs, they're actively engaged in studying them, and when they see good results, they'll continue to use them and their confidence will rise. The next thing you want to do, a practical learning technique, is to focus on building up weak academic areas. Pre-learning during summertime or during breaks, if you get the books ahead of time, to just have them look at them and understand what's coming next, builds confidence in a way that you might not believe. Quizlet and Khan Academy are excellent resources. They bolster learning in any challenging subject. But just don't use them on the screen, okay? You can start there, but then manipulate the information in various ways to help the child store the information in his memory. You can print it out. You can write things down from the screen. You can make flashcards. You can combine study strategies that work for your child. Next, we're going to talk about healthy coping skills. So you want to develop healthy coping skills, because that's going to make life easier for everyone. children with ADHD, parents of children with ADHD, teachers in the classroom. So first you need to identify your child's triggers and understand what causes them and their reaction to them. You want to develop some calming strategies and possibly do some role playing. The main important thing is to remain calm during an outburst and validate your child's feelings, and then praise your child when they are able to remain in control of their emotions. To make the biggest impact in developing coping skills, you should set a time to discuss whatever the disruptive behavior was outside of wherever you were, whether it's in the dining room, at a play date, or in the classroom. Do not make the discussion happen in the moment. Strive for after the immediate stressful moment has passed. And in that setting, tutors, counselors, coaches, whoever was working with you and the child, if it's not just a parent and child, can break down the moment, discuss the possible causes of the behavior, and offer strategies for solution. The other thing that I think is really important in developing coping skills is being able to practice, like I said, meditation and breathing exercises. And there's many examples of those on attitude.com. Let's see, I know that we're moving along here. And next slide is treatment. So I'm just going to speak quickly about treatment because I know we want to get to your questions, but I've broken it down into 4 areas: medication, therapy, pills and skills, and learning support and accommodations. So the first line ADHD medication that's prescribed to children is typically a stimulant. It's either methylphenidate or an amphetamine. And those are available as a tablet, a capsule, liquid, sometimes a disintegrating tablet, and even a patch. You want to work with your child's prescribing doctor, usually a psychiatrist, to identify what medication is best and then to calibrate the dose in a way that works best and has the fewest side effects. So like I said in the very beginning, you're going to have to tweak this system with your child and your doctor. And you're going to need feedback from your child about how the medication feels and helping your child understand that you might have to feel a little bad from some of the medications before you move on to the one that fits just right. Part of that too could be choosing a formulation that your child can tolerate. Liquid formulations or flavored tablets that dissolve might be best if your child has a problem swallowing pills. The other thing is that many children have difficulty getting up in the morning, and the morning routine getting to school can be painful for some families. And that is a situation that I have a tip for. That is to wake your child like half an hour early. Give them their medication. If it's a patch, put the patch on them, let them go back to sleep, and then wake them up at their regular time. And the medication is in their system, and it should really make your day go by a little more smoothly. So next, we're going to move on to therapy. And the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends behavior therapy in conjunction with medication to treat symptoms in children's ages 6 to 12. Behavior therapy reinforces the desired favors, so the positive reinforcement, with parenting strategies that focus on, guess what? Consistency, clarity, and incentives. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, helps children change their behaviors by examining and changing their thoughts. It develops self-awareness, and it helps the children to understand what they're doing and to really, again, take ownership of how their brain works and what their brain is doing and how that affects their body and the world around them. I use CBT in my practice, and it's highly effective. There are a multitude of therapies out there. These are the ones that I recommend, but your doctor and Attitude are both great resources for learning about the types of therapy that might be a good fit for your child and your family. I do like to say that things like acupuncture, nutrition, exercise are all really important. Biofeedback is another one, are all really helpful. And if they work for you, they would be worth looking into. So I don't want to fail to mention those. Next, I just want to quickly talk about skills and pills, which is what we called it when I worked at the University of Pennsylvania. And that is the idea of using both medication and therapy at the same time. Because if your child is medicated, that gives them the clarity and the focus to understand and be able to do the therapy and take on what they've learned in therapy and apply it better. So it's sort of like creating a blank slate to build upon and help build that foundation that we were discussing earlier. And lastly, I'd like to talk about learning support and accommodations. Children with ADHD often have some comorbidities and some are learning disabilities, and they can benefit from an IEP or a 504 plan. These outline classroom accommodations or academic services. These are documents, they're legal documents, and they're provided by public schools. Private schools normally have something called a learning plan or a learning support plan that they can build and put in place. Behavior intervention plans help some students replace their interfering behaviors with appropriate alternative actions. The school counselor is also another really important resource. She works to know, she or he, to know what's going on with the children socially and emotionally. She can create friendship groups. She can be a resource for you, for therapists, psychologists, other providers. So always check in with the school counselor at your school. So with that, I think we have covered everything. The one thing I'd like to leave you with is a quote, since we started with a quote, and that is, treat people as if they were what they ought to be, and you will help them become what they are capable of becoming. And to me, that's really the big picture and the point of doing what I do. And I hope that it will help you understand that while all of this can be overwhelming, there are lots of strategies and resources and people out there to help. As I said when we started, I'm always happy to share what I know. And I have lots of info and tools for children with ADHD on my website and social media. This is my contact information. And I just wanted to say that I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here with me today.
Meg, thank you so much. I know if anyone listening out there is like me, your hand is cramping up from taking so many notes. This was just an absolute treasure trove of ideas and resources, things that we can actually put into our daily use and routines. So that's so valued and rare. So thank you so much for this presentation. I will do my best to ask some of the questions that I saw pop up more than once. I think one of the most timely ones is a question about we're starting the new school year. Do you recommend that parents reach out to teachers in advance or, within the first few weeks with some ideas, things like the fidgets and the stop sign that you talked about, with those ideas kind of preemptively? Or do you recommend waiting to see how things play out?
I recommend focusing on your child, right? So you want the teacher to understand what your child is all about, to value them and how their brain works. So I think it's always wise to reach out to the teacher and talk about how your child works and things that have worked for you. And then I think you can sort of feel out the situation from there. And if they're open to it, you can suggest the things that work. But I would also make sure that those things work, like practice them at home and make sure that your child is ready and willing to use them before you ask her to implement them.
Great. Okay, a couple of specific questions about checklists. A lot of parents love checklists and they report that they work well for about 2 weeks. And then the shine wears dull and they have a hard time getting their kids to stick with it. Do you have advice specifically for keeping it going after that initial few weeks?
So that's why I ran a little bit long, because I get so excited about strategies, and I really got into that piece of it. Yes, the checklists are fantastic and parents love them. And then all of a sudden there's checklist blindness. So I say, mix it up as much as you can, right? If you want to print the same checklist out on different color papers and switch it because that color is going to get their attention. If you want to take the checklist down after 2 weeks and take the items of the checklist and put each one on a Post-it note, that's going to get their attention. Like I said, if you have a child with a phone or a tablet, texting them, messaging them, the things that are on the checklist, sometimes leaving a voice recording that they hear when they come downstairs, all the different modalities, like really being creative and taking things apart and actually trying to have as much fun with it as you can will bring the checklist back to life.
Okay, so we got to think about all the different forms and functions that a checklist can take. Get creative. Okay, and I just love this question because we did get a lot of feedback asking about how well exercise specifically can help children with ADHD. And the answer, is can help a lot. And someone wrote in and said that their son definitely thinks better when he's walking, but how can he write his assignments while he's walking? What are some tools you could recommend for those kids who do their best thinking when their body is moving? And that doesn't always make it easy to put pen to paper.
Exactly. First, let me just touch on exercise, 30 minutes a day. Whether it's homework related or not, just the 30 minutes of exercise clears the brain and there's tons of research out there that has proven that it helps ADHD. So that is for sure an important thing. Now, if you can integrate getting some homework done during that exercise period, that's even better. If a child is walking, it could be the time that he listens or she listens to their audiobook. It could also be that they carry a phone that has a voice recorder or a voice recorder. I know that Google Chrome has an ability to record your voice, but then also transcribe it into a Google Doc. It's not 100% accurate, but it gets the main idea. So that's another way that you could get that done. One of the other things that I had done for many years when I had young children in my practice was we had a mini trampoline. And so we would let them jump on the mini trampoline and practice their math facts or do their reading words or read out their sentences. And we would write them down and then they would rewrite them. So things like that are some helpful strategies.
Yes, I love the dictation strategy and also audiobooks. A lot of people kind of forget audiobooks can be a very effective tool for kids with ADHD and other learning disabilities. I want to make sure I get to this one because you touched on how effective CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, has been in your practice. And a couple of parents asking that they had felt or heard that was more effective with adults. And it sounds like you're saying it can be effective for children as well. Is that true? I don't want to put words in your mouth. And how is it similar or dissimilar to neurofeedback?
So it generally is recommended for adults. I have found that behavioral therapy is recommended for children. But once you get to the point that they're able to master that and curb behaviors, that you can take it to the next level and add in the cognitions behind those behaviors. So we're not doing full-blown CBT, but what we're doing is we're building them up to the next level so that they're able to continue making progress and that they're able, like, what were you thinking when you did that? Okay, let's think about that. Does that happen often when you get angry? Is that a thought that you have before you kick the box? Things like that to move forward and then help them change their thoughts. Like, what would you think about next time? Neurofeedback is slightly different, but also very helpful. And like I said, I recommend exploring all of them. There's also DBT and some other treatments out there. And I feel like it's all very individualized and you need to just explore them and find out what works best for your child and for your family. And there's a lot of information about all of them on Attitude.
Yes, I was going to say this could be an entire webinar. And we do have under the medications and treatments channel on attitudemag.com, you will see sections for therapies, for natural treatments, for medications. Of course, there's more than you can probably consume.
It's a great place to go if you're wondering what else you can do for your child.
Yes. Unfortunately, it is 2:00. That time absolutely flew by. I wanted to, because I'd never heard of this before, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. One of our listeners said that she has found that Alexa will read your ebooks to you, which is great. Maybe your textbooks, everyone. So anyway, there's just a bounty of ideas coming from the community and from Meg. Thank you, everyone who joined us and participated and sent in ideas and questions. And Meg, thank you so much. This was truly so useful. And please, everyone, remember that this was only part 1 in our series. Meg will be leading part 2 for us, which is going to have more of a focus on teens and young adults. So we did have a few questions today about teens that I sort of saved for that later webinar. So we hope you will join us for that. And in the meantime, thanks again, Meg, and thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you.
For more Attitude podcasts and information on living well with attention deficit, visit attitudemag.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com. That's ADDITUDEMAG.com.